Hello, Visionary Tribe. This is Lorna Liana, host of the Entheo Nation podcast and the Modern Shaman Summit. In the Modern Shaman Summit, we are gathered to explore how we can access ancient earth wisdom to navigate our complex modern lives and become the visionary leaders that we are meant to be. The Modern Shaman Summit is where we explore how we can use the ancient shamanic practices of working with spiritual allies, of visioning, dreaming, and working with plants and animals to tap into the abundant energy of this living planet and navigate our high-tech modern lifestyles. And so one of the things that I want to explore today in our conversation with Jocelyn Mercado, my client here, who is a transformational life coach, is the idea around redesigning our consciousness so that we can become more effective change makers. So let me share with you a little bit more about Jocelyn. Jocelyn is a transformational life coach, an author, holistic health consultant, and environmentalist. She works with visionary clients all around the world to help them break free of everything that holds them back so that they can launch their inspired vision and or a new business to the world while turning their skills as a healer or a teacher into a financially sustainable enterprise. She helps people connect with their heart's truth and redesign their lives so that they can spend more time doing what they love and become who they are meant to be. So thank you so much for joining us today, Jocelyn.
Thank you, Lorna. Thanks so much for having me on your summit.
So before we dive into the really intriguing practice of redesigning our consciousness, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey on how you were able to discover your purpose and do this profound work that you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lorna. I have had quite an incredible and amazing journey. I went through some difficult times. I was from the age of 16 until I turned 32. I was on antidepressants because of depression and anxiety. And so I was just always searching and always feeling lost and wondering, how I could find my purpose and how I could figure out what would make me feel fulfilled, because I never felt that way. And so it was actually with the birth of my first child, when I was 32 years old, that I realized I had to change. And at that point, I had to be off the antidepressants because when you're, pregnant and nursing, you can't be on the medicine. And so I had to get off and I had to find a way to be okay. And that was very difficult. I went through a couple really tough years, and didn't know if I was ever actually going to be able to do it without the meds. So finally, I just decided I had to learn. There had to be a different way of seeing things. And I started reading everything I could get my hands on. And so I read about, all different types of religions, all different philosophies on why we're here. And what really kept calling my attention was indigenous wisdom and nature-based wisdom. And so I really started to focus in on that. And I feel like I have been led on this path all the way. I feel like there's a higher purpose, and I think there's for all of us. We're being led, we're being called to do something, and there are signs and symbols all around that are trying to get us on that track and on that highest path for us. So I followed that, and I was inspired to write a book. And then I discovered the Pachamama Alliance, which was their mission is very much in alignment with my book. My book is about the indigenous people of the Amazon rainforest. And everything just seemed to be falling into place. I started blogging for the Pachamama Alliance. And at that point is when I was inspired to create this business, Sacred Planet. And it's so much more than a business. It's a global community, and it's become a global network for healing and understanding. And it's just been really incredible to be given this great opportunity.
First of all, I just want to commend you on your courage to get off those antidepressants because, first of all, they're very difficult to get off of. And then you were on them for such a long time. And I know a number of people who I love, who are dear to my heart, that have been unable to get off these antidepressants that they depend on. And that journey of, just kind of like going from that last, decreasing the dosages and then just cutting it off. Like, for a lot of people is an experience of incredible difficulty and pain. So thank you so much for sharing that story and for having the courage to go through that. And then, so now that you are in a place where you can help people with their difficult struggles too, because honestly, that's probably one of the most difficult struggles that I can imagine being on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting because a lot of the clients who come to me have had that struggle or are currently going through that struggle. So it's it's amazing to be able to then pass the wisdom along to them, what I have learned along the way, and hopefully help them out on their journey too.
Yeah, and one thing that I see around your triumph is also this profound redesigning of your consciousness as well, because going from a place where our culture today, I mean, is very, our society and culture is very oriented towards prescribing meds, and so we have pharmaceutical quote unquote remedies, whether or not they're effective or not, for any kind of ailment that you could possibly have, and a lot of these conditions are almost like even invented so that you could actually have the medication to treat that condition. And frankly, when you look at our modern lifestyles, the complexity of our lives, especially our high-tech lives, if we're living in like the first world, which has very high rates of depression, in spite of our relative affluence compared to the rest of the world, if you look at the complexities that have now become to define our modern lifestyles, it can be really stressful because our minds, our emotional selves, our bodies have not adapted and not evolved fast enough. Like our physical organisms evolve so much more slowly. So it really wasn't that long ago in human history that we were living mostly, in tune with nature. We were, in nature every day, either seeking our food or hunting for it, or growing our food. So now we spend our times, in front of computers and cubicles, with artificial light. So there's a lot of natural experience, like emotional, feelings that would come up, like stress and anxiety, that is a function of what our lives have become. So I would love to ask you about the whole process that you found was most effective to you, and that you share with your clients on how to fundamentally redesign our consciousness so that we can adapt to our reality.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back quickly to one thing that you said, you made a wonderful point that we evolved for tens of thousands of years to be in nature, to be closely connected with nature, and to be receiving from and giving to nature as part of our daily joy and our part of our daily fulfillment. And we are missing that so much in our modern world. In so many ways, we are separated from nature. And I was at a talk recently where an indigenous man stood up and he said, "The European world is square." He said the natural world and the indigenous world is round. And he said, "We're in a square building. You all live in square houses." He was like, "That's not the way the world works." So it's very interesting to think about it that way. That's the square world that we live in and our separation from nature. It's kind of symbolic of that. So in any case, I was recently reading an article about addiction and how we are addicted to so many things in our society. And it's an attempt to fill that void that we're missing from that just natural communication with nature that we were evolved to depend on. So consumerism is an addiction to shopping. We feel so great when we go out and spend a lot of money, but it's not real joy. It's false. And addiction to drugs, alcohol. Certain relationships are an addiction. It's pervasive throughout our society, and that's one of those things too that getting back to nature can help to cure. So anyway, that's another topic, I suppose, but I just wanted to make that point quickly. So yes, the process. When I work with a client, we always start by looking at that client's limiting beliefs. So, we want to get down to the root of those beliefs that were created, usually in childhood, usually very, very early on. There's a quote that's, it's unknown who said it first, but it goes, you were born wise, you were born complete. And that's so true for all of us, that when we were born and when we were children, we came into this world with this essential knowledge that was passed down from our ancestors for thousands and thousands of years, right? And we know when we're children, we know how to bring abundance to ourselves. We know how to bring, how to get food, and how to cry and, get what we need, and how to make friends, and how to love and just be compassionate. And as we grow up, we start to be influenced by outside forces. So it may be the limiting beliefs of our parents and the unconsciousness of our parents that causes us to shut down in certain ways. And then as we get older and we get into school and we're influenced by our peers, there's certain social rules and regulations, that are placed upon us, and you have to be this way, and you have to try to be normal, right? Quote, quote, normal. And all of that can take us away from who we truly are and that knowledge that we have deep down inside. So we start building walls to protect ourselves, and to make ourselves feel safe, because we don't understand, especially when we're little, how come I feel like it's this way, but everyone else is telling me that it's that way? It doesn't make sense. I need to protect myself. I need to feel safe. And so we shut down, slowly, gradually, we shut down pieces of who we are. So when we work with those limiting beliefs, when I go through that work with my clients, it creates incredible breakthroughs. I'll share one exercise that we do that's really, really powerful. We will so my client will get into kind of a meditative state, and then I'll ask certain questions of them about their childhood and about how things were as they were growing up. And these questions are meant to lead to uncovering their limiting beliefs. And so we'll come up with 3 or 4 limiting beliefs that are really, really key and really keeping that person stuck and trapped where they are. And then what we'll do is jointly together, the client and I will come up with an affirmation for each of those limiting beliefs. And so the affirmation is a positive belief that directly contradicts that negative belief that they've held all their lives. And so using technology, to your point, Lorna, we use their smartphone. So I'll have that person set up in their smartphone these affirmations. And so throughout the day, like they might see one at 9 a.m., one at 11 a.m., one at 1 p.m., one at 3 p.m., and there are these beautiful affirmations that directly contradict the negative beliefs that they hold. And so every day they're getting repeated, again and again and again. They're seeing these beautiful negative beliefs, and it's a very powerful practice that really helps to delete the negative beliefs and then replace them with a positive one. So that's how we always start out with any of my clients, regardless of if it's trying to find their life's purpose or trying to launch their vision to the world. We always start out with clearing limiting beliefs, because that's just so important in being able to leap forward in everything else that they want to do.
So you set up these alarm reminders that have the positive affirmative belief that displays at a different time during the day. Is that
exactly
how that works?
Yeah, it's like, so if there's 4 affirmations, they'll see one, every 2 or 3 hours. It's all throughout the day. And then every day they see those same 4 again and again. So it's very repetitive, and it really helps it to get into their subconscious. And as I said, to delete out that negative belief, because it directly contradicts it, and they're seeing that again and again.
Yeah, I think that's an incredibly powerful practice. You're basically rewiring your neural pathways. So, one of the things that I have learned in my exploration of neuro-linguistic programming, and it ties very much with the ancient practice of mantra as well. It's like, we tend to have these stories that we carry with us, and it's always the same story. If you pay attention to, that story that you tell about yourself, or whether it's like your ability or your weight or your appearance, like we all have something, or life in general, or people are like this, or women are like that, or men are like this. It's repetitive, right? So then you need to counteract that repetition with a different kind of repetition, and that actually helps to rewire your neural pathways to think a different story.
Absolutely. Yes, very much so. And then, a lot of what we do in the work is that we have to go into the shadow. Mm-hmm. That's a very, very key component of this coaching work that we do. And, nature teaches us that too. A lot of what I teach is very, very heavily nature-based, because there's just so much wisdom to be found in nature. And one of the stories that I like to share related to the shadow, we need to go through the shadow in order to experience the fullness of the light. It's so, so, so important. So we have to deal with what happened in the past, and then we can move forward. So one story that I really love to share is I love thunderstorms. I just have always, ever since I was a kid, if there's a thunderstorm, like I was never afraid of the thunder. I just wanted to stand at the window and like watch the thunderstorm roll in. So there was one time recently, so just within the past year, I was out in my backyard and a thunderstorm was rolling in. And so, I have my favorite tree in my backyard. And I love to hug my favorite tree. And so I went over, and for whatever reason, I decided to like wrap my arms around my tree at that point. And the tree, so the top of the tree was like whipping in the wind as this thunderstorm was rolling in. And it was still far enough off that, don't worry, I wasn't like about to be hit by lightning or anything. So I wrapped my arms around this tree, and I could put my ear up against the trunk, and I could hear this grinding and this creaking and like terrible noises inside the tree. And it was really crazy because it impressed upon me the idea that, we always hear that trees can bend but not break, right? So they're flexible and they can move and they can, survive hurricanes and everything, but they're so solid and so rooted. So this is just such a great metaphor for life, because we've all been at that point in our lives where we have been like creaking and grinding and just feeling on the inside like we're just going to break apart, right? And a great message from nature is that, just like the tree going through the thunderstorm, we have to get through this shadow. We have to get through the storm, but we can trust that with the cycles of life, that the storm's going to pass and the sun is going to come out again, and we're going to see a brighter side.
So how do you help your clients recognize that there even is a shadow? So one of the sneaky things about shadows is like they're shadows. They lurk. They're in your blind spot. How do you know that we all have shadows, but how do you know that this thing that is blocking your client from their inspired vision or the business they want to create or the nonprofit they want to launch is what is in the way of themselves and their dreams?
Yeah, definitely. There are a few different ways that we use. Shamanic journeying is a very, very important way to kind of ask the questions and to find out what we need to know, even if we don't know what we need to know, if you know what I mean. Because when we do shamanic journeying, it's such an incredible process. When we go into a shamanic journey, we are communicating with three fundamental aspects of the human experience. So we're communicating with spirit, because we are going to, meet with a spirit guide, maybe experience other guides along the way, and also feel that connection with the divine. We're also communicating with nature. And so nature, is just constantly sending us signs and symbols to lead us on our way. So in journeys, we receive those symbols. Also in dreams and in waking life, we can receive symbols from nature, but in journeys we do very strongly. And then also from the self, and so some people may call this the subconscious, but in another way, it's kind of like the truths that I talked about that we've known since we were born. But when we connect with all three of these fundamental aspects, the spirit, spirit, nature, and the self, we can get some really deep answers. And so what I recommend is that when people do a shamanic journey, especially if they're just starting and they're just getting used to journeying, if you don't know what questions to ask, the best question that you can possibly ask is, please reveal to me something, whatever it is that I most need to know at this time. And you'll get some really incredible answers. It's amazing. So I love using shamanic journeying as a way to ask, what is it that I need to know right now? Another method that we use is to get into a real kind of a trance state or a meditative state, and then I will ask questions that are meant to spur certain, deep memories. And so the answers to those questions too can be very revealing. So that's another process that I like to do. And we just go through and I'll ask questions, and then it's very interesting because when you're asking the right questions, some real passion just comes up for the person, and they'll reveal things and they'll say something and then they'll say, oh my gosh, I don't know where that came from, but it's really meaningful. So that's when you know you're getting to the heart of what matters.
So, can you give us an example of a question that you would ask, like a really powerful question that
Sure.
reveals those hidden gems of wisdom?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of it is related to childhood. So one of the my favorite things that I like to ask is, um, what is something that was really important to your mother? Or what is something that was really important to your father? And those reveals, you wouldn't think, but those reveal some deep, deep stuff. It's really incredible.
Wow. Yeah, I'm already coming up with some answers like, whoa, okay, okay. Great. So, one of the things that I have noticed, but if you pay attention to this thing, you will probably notice that it's a very pervasive story, right? Is this story of scarcity, of not having enough, or whether it's enough time or enough money or enough something in order to be able to bring your beautiful dream into reality. And so some of those stories can go very, very deep, especially, if you were a child and you grew up and your parents didn't have a lot of money, it's very easy to, inherit a story about like never having enough money, things being always too expensive, and, and stories about rich people. Or just, not being able to afford something. And it's kind of interesting because in my work as a coach, helping people grow their businesses, you notice things when a person cannot afford to invest in their business, but the next day they'll go out and buy an iPad for $1,000 or something.
Exactly.
So you start to notice these discrepancies, and it's easy to notice as an outside observer. But when you're working with somebody who's not like fully aware about their scarcity story, and that scarcity story is the number one thing that's preventing them from launching their big beautiful vision, because frankly a big beautiful vision, the bigger it is, the more ambitious it is, the more resources it's going to require. So if you're going to be stand in solidarity with Standing Rock, and like fight like the oil company, you're not going to get far with $250. It's a much bigger fight, right? And it's going to require
Yeah.
more resources and all the people that are there, like, camped out and all that. So, how do you work with people on realizing that their big, ambitious vision merits whatever effort it will take in terms of time, energy, and resources for them to be able to, manifest? And how do you get past that deep scarcity story that comes from childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because that scarcity story is often very closely tied to feelings of self-worth. Like, who am I to have this big vision? Who am I to try to do this huge project, And that's very closely related to that feeling of scarcity. It's like scarcity of self, as well as scarcity of money and resources. So to kind of counter all of that, the most important thing I think for people to know is that we live in a time where here on this planet we are desperate for change. We are desperate for healing and nurturing and peace and compassion and communication, all of these things that we so deeply need and that are just not not built into the framework of our modern society that's based around money and power and profit. So when we have a calling and when we are feeling like, oh my gosh, I want to go out and become an energy healer, or I want to go out and, share my wisdom about the sacred feminine or whatever it might be, that is for a reason. It is for a very, very important reason. And so we actually have a sacred responsibility to make that vision happen and to bring it to life. And yes, as you said, Lorna, in order to make that vision come to life, it's going to take a lot of resources. It's going to take financial resources. It's going to take networking and connections, and it's going to take personal feelings of confidence and self-worth in order to do all of that. So what I love to tell my clients is that this work that we're doing together is all based around the idea that we have a sacred responsibility to bring that vision out to the world, because if you have this feeling that you want to change your life around so that you can become a healer or become a teacher of some sort, You are meant to do that because it's going to make the world a better place. So how can you not? How can you not do it? The other part of that is doing some really deep work, and this falls into the limiting beliefs and creating the affirmations. Some really deep work to build that person's confidence that they can bring resources to them. Because the truth is that when we are truly ready, and when we have done that inner work, and then we say to the universe, look, I'm ready, send me the money, send me the resources that I need. If we're truly ready to receive them, we will, and we'll know what to do to bring those resources in. So it's about understanding that responsibility that we have to make the world a better place. And it's also about opening up and allowing it to happen and allowing our life to change in order to bring those resources to us.
So you often talk about the sacredness of nature and ourselves. Why is it important for us as change makers to know this beyond a doubt?
Definitely. So I want to tell a little story about that. This year I had the amazing opportunity to spend a week in Taos with an Indigenous leader named Pat McCabe. She's an absolutely wonderful, brilliant, amazing person. And she's lived in Taos for 40 years, and she is a Navajo woman, and she is trained in the Lakota traditions, ceremonial traditions. And so she basically took us around to all of the places that are sacred for her. You know, the places where she has held sweat lodge and the places where she has raised her family. And we were all just so incredibly touched by the sacredness of nature for her. So one example of that is in Taos, it's high desert climate there. So water is fairly scarce. So the water, you know, tends to originate at the top of the mountains and come flowing down the sides of the mountains. And so everywhere that this water is coming down and forming pools or going into rivers are sacred sites, and they are honored and they are revered, these places where the water comes down to the people to give life. I had just never fully appreciated the beauty and the magic of water until I spent this week with her and just saw the sacredness, the absolute sacredness of it. So the thing is that when we can see the sacredness in nature, when we can see the magic of, you know, leaves appearing in the springtime, when we can really, really feel that in our heart, or the sacredness of water, or, you know, the sacredness of our connection with the plants and animals, then we can also see the sacredness of ourselves. We can also see how we are guided and supported every step of the way. We are never alone. And so all of that is where I find my greatest inspiration, I know, for bringing my vision out into the world. So I try to share that with people, because I think, to me, that's the deepest kind of religion that I can have. Like, I've studied all different religions around the world. I was raised Catholic, and there's some parts of that religion that are still, you know, acceptable to me, and some that aren't. I believe that all the religions are essentially, you know, based around these ideas of compassion and service to others and peace and love. But nature, you know, nature was our first church, or our first temple, where we went out to pray and just be in awe of the sacredness and the beauty. So when we really connect with that, when we feel it in our heart, then we know that we're here for a reason. We know that we are here to be in community and to make the world a better place with everybody else. So I feel that realization, that full, heartfelt realization of the sacredness is so important to everyone along their journey, and especially to someone who has a big vision and needs that inspiration to drive them forward.
Mm-hmm. You often say that Mother Earth is communicating with us. I'd love to hear from you what you mean by this, and hear about any experiences that have shown you that indeed nature is talking to you, and what we should do about it if we hear it.
Definitely. Yeah, that's the big question, right? Well, for that, I want to share another experience that I had that's also related to the time that I spent in Taos. So I started doing shamanic journeying sometime in 2015, like early 2015, and so I've been, kind of doing more and more and more of it. And so at the beginning of 2016, I started seeing this place in my journeys that I had never seen before. It was nowhere I had ever been in my waking life. But it was a beautiful, beautiful scene with a real tall, black, snow-capped mountain off in the distance, and a river or some water at the base of it, and then some scraggly trees and bushes like right in front of me, and a forest behind me. And so it was just very interesting because I kept seeing the same place every time I went to journey, and horse was always with me there. I was always riding on horse, and it was like a wild Mustang or an Appaloosa, or one of these beautiful, beautiful horses. And so there was such deep symbolism here, because horse means freedom and traveling. And so I thought, I couldn't figure out though what it meant. And so then I started hearing, you have to go to New Mexico. And, I never considered really going to New Mexico. I have heard that it's a lovely place, but just never thought much about it. And so I didn't know exactly what that meant either. And I heard that again too. And again, many, many of my journeys, I kept going to the same place, and it was the same backdrop and scenery. And so then I was on the Pachamama Alliance website, and I saw that there was a trip called Journey to Taos, and it was to Taos, New Mexico. And I thought, okay, well, somehow this just feels right. Maybe this is how I'm meant to go to New Mexico. So I signed up for it. And it was very interesting because there was no itinerary. There was no like, okay, day 1, here's what we're going to do, days 2 and 3. So it was very like just open. You have to be like totally open to whatever when you sign up for it. So I did, and I went, and you can imagine my surprise. I don't know anything about the landscape in New Mexico, what it looks like there. So you can imagine my surprise when I arrived there, and we took a long drive from the Albuquerque airport into Taos, and I realized that same mountain was here. This was where I was meant to go to see this mountain. And then on day, I don't know, it was like the 3rd or 4th day that we were there, we went to visit a lake. And it was a very sacred time. It was a very sacred visit because there were 5 white pelicans flying there, and there had our leader Pat said she had never seen pelicans there ever in the 40 years she'd been living in Taos, and she went to that lake a lot. So there were 5 white pelicans. So then I was standing there, and I realized all of a sudden that this was the exact scene I had seen in my journey for months and months, with the mountain and the lake right there, and then the scraggly bushes and the forest behind me. And it was absolutely incredible. And throughout my time there, I had no doubt, it was just a very, very clear and focused certainty that mountain was talking to me. And I had never really felt anything like that strongly before. And it really it was, it wasn't unsettling. It was just, and it's hard to explain. I just, as I said, never felt anything with that certainty before, spiritually. And so some other amazing things happened, but in the end, I am still in communication with the mountain in Taos, even from here where I am back in Maryland in my home. And I have just received the most amazing and incredible insights. And so for that, from that experience, I have no doubt that Mother Earth is talking to us. There are many stories that you can read of people having dreams of polar bears and whales and certain key animals that seem to want to, especially, seem to have a proclivity for communicating with us and trying to reach out to us and get us to join together in helping to save the planet, or raise our consciousness in different ways. So there are a lot of different signs of Mother Earth talking to us, and I believe that those are some. And in addition, in doing this work and in talking to so many people all around the planet about their big vision and what they believe their life purpose to be, it's very, very clear that right now just incredibly huge numbers of people are being called to be healers and teachers, and to just getting a calling to help people reconnect with creativity, reconnect with nature in many different ways. And so everybody, just so many people that I talk to want to quit their normal job and go out and do this amazing healing work. And so that to me is that's why I talk about the consciousness redesign, because that's what we're being asked to do here. We're being asked to change, to get rid of the old paradigm, get rid of the constructs of modern society, and launch ourselves into this new period where love and compassion and nurturing are going to be the focus. And so that's got to come from Mother Earth. That's where this call is coming from. So many people around the globe are hearing it. I bet most of the people listening to this interview have heard it in some form or another.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing with us your stories and what you've learned from them. We are at the end of our session. I would love to hear about the free gift that you have for our audience.
Yes, absolutely. I am offering a guided shamanic journey that is called Connect with Nature and Discover How You Are Meant to Change the World. It's a really beautiful journey, so I hope everybody will click on it and go and listen. It's a little over 10 minutes long, so it's not a huge amount of time, and it's totally worth it. And then also, I do want to mention, Lorna, when people click there and enter their name and email address to receive that journey, they will also get a chance for a special invitation to an upcoming event that I have on November 11th. It's the Women with a Vision webinar. And this is going to be featuring 6 women who are leading the sacred feminine revolution, to share ways that we can raise the vibration of the sacred feminine on the planet. So I welcome everybody to check out that webinar. It is free, and you'll automatically see a page for that when you sign up for the journey.
Amazing. Okay, so you can get that guided meditation just below this video. Just click on the link. And so thank you so much for your time here today. I want to wish you a beautiful rest of your day, Jocelyn.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lorna. You too.
Bye-bye. Bye.